It's time for the Phil Ferguson Show.
This is Phil Ferguson, and you are listening to The Phil Ferguson Show. I have to acknowledge something that I hate to acknowledge, and it doesn't happen very often. I have been defeated. Yes, my battle of attempting to heat the pool with covers and the solar panels on the roof versus the cold nights that happen in January in Orlando area. I have lost. I have lost the battle. I actually got ruined by the new screens. We had some screens that apparently got damaged in one or both of the hurricanes, and we decided to replace all of the screens. And the nice thing is the screens provide better sun protection. It's a higher grade of screen, and I don't know if that means it's thicker or the individual pieces that make up the screen, the fibers are thicker or closer together, but apparently it blocks more light, and so the plastic on the top of the pool really doesn't heat it up that much, and the roof heater, when you get a couple of cloudy days, the pool is not warm enough. So now I've lost that battle. I got to decide if I want to do wacky homemade shit with tubing to try to collect some more solar energy, or buy a heater. I could always buy an additional heater on top of the rooftop heater, whether it's conventional electric or heat pump. I've resisted the heat pump idea because it's $1,600 out of pocket for the cheapest one I could find that I think might work. When I've talked to a couple of local companies, of course, they want me to spend $5,000 or $6,000 because the heat pump I want to get is underrated for the size of my pool, and they are concerned that it won't work. And I'm under the impression that all I need it to do is add a degree or 2 or 3 per day. It doesn't have to heat up the pool overnight. I just want to raise the base level of the pool. I went out this afternoon and looked at the temperature control by the pump, and it said that the pool was 82. I was so excited. I took off the cover and I jumped in the pool, only to find out that I had been tricked because the sun, as it's setting in the west, is heating up the pump area with bright sunlight, but not so much the pool. So it was only 78 in the pool, which I know it's tragic, but it means probably from early December, maybe to early February, the pool, generally speaking, is not going to be warm enough for my comfort. And so there it is. I'm going to possibly move on to something else or get refixated on this and see what kind of an extra pump or heater or whatever. Maybe I can put a bucket of water on the stove and pour it in. Who knows? All right. So we've got that out of the way. Other fun news. I've had a few people tell me that Bitcoin is up. And of course they say, well, Phil, you've never talked negatively about Bitcoin when it's going up. Why is that? And my first response is, you have not been paying attention. Bitcoin is a con if the price goes down. Bitcoin is a con if the price goes up. Con, Ponzi scheme, pyramid scheme, I don't know. All three in one. It's like Christianity. All three in one. Ooh, I like that. I may have to work with that. The only true crypto coin is the Phil coin. You can get yours. Just send me a check for $22,000. Or actually, you're going to have to send me some Bitcoin probably. Oh, wait, that doesn't work. It's a fun story on the topic of cryptocurrency while we're talking about that. over here at CNN, I just saw this. Crypto Queen scammed investors out of $4 billion. Can you believe that? That something in the crypto world was a scam. I'm hard pressed. She apparently, with a group of others, launched a thing called OneCoin. And apparently her name is, I'm going to do this injustice. Please forgive me. I don't know if it's a Bulgarian or Russian or Polish name. Ruya Ignatova. Kind of sounds Russian to me, but what do I know? Her and her band, her group, sold OneCoin and raised $4 billion. And they hopped on a plane. Oh, it says she was born in Bulgaria. I was in the right area. They hopped on a plane and disappeared. So, wow. The funny thing is OneCoin is still available. You can get it at any quality crypto exchange, I guess. I don't know. The total market cap on this one is only $4,500. How many are there? There's 100,000. I think that's what that is. Oh no, that T is not for thousand. There's 100 trillion. There's 100 trillion of OneCoin, and its current value is 0.0 with 10 zeros and then 4377, because that's what we're gonna do with the crypto world. I also found out there's a Gucci OneCoin. There's Gucci OneCoin is currently trading at 0.001121, and the circulating supply is 20 million. So yeah, there's Gucci OneCoin. I found that because I was looking for OneCoin. But there is a Gucci OneCoin. I'm absolutely certain it has nothing to do with Gucci. And but there it is. It still exists. Oh, and I forgot my perennial favorite, Grimace Coin. Yes, Grimace, the McDonald's cartoon character, was created as a total lark. There are apparently 1 million Grimace coins that originally sold for as much as $8 a piece, are now worth 55 cents, a market cap of $554,000. And just to give you an idea of how incredible this opportunity is, let's see, what is the trading activity? The volume in the preceding 24 hours was $203. So there's $203 of trading volume on something that Coin Market Cap says that its market cap is $554 million. And quite frankly, the vast majority of all coins that are out there, they're doing a thing which you can do with stocks. How many shares, how many coins times the last trading price. And poof, that's the market cap for this coin. And it could be one trade of one coin or 5 coins or 10 coins or 100 coins back and forth between the same people, because there's absolutely no controls and no regulation on that. So I think that I'm pretty comfortable in saying that a good part of the total market cap of cryptocurrency, a good third of it just doesn't exist. And of course, also in the top 10, let's see, what do we have here? We have Tether, which is a US dollar-based coin. So it should be worth $1. Theoretically, it's backed by dollars somehow. US dollar coin, number 5. Binance token, which is $1. And Dogecoin coming in at number 9, which we all know was launched as a joke. And its market cap is, oh yeah, I think I'm reading that right, 11 billion. So it continues to be just a empty shell of a sad, pathetic excuse. I don't know, mass delusion, whatever it is. So today's show, let's talk about that for a minute. 2 really fun segments. One is with Rich Miller, and Rich is a person that was able to think his way out of religion. And so we're going to have a great fun hearing from him. But before we do that, our Investing Skeptically segment today, I am going to call the 17-year performance. 7 years ago, I did this for the first time. I did 10-year performance of the stock market and a couple of different strategies that one might use to try to get reasonable returns for reasonable risks, and compares a couple of different strategies with the new year-end data from 2022. So we've got all of that and more coming up in this segment, or this episode of the Phil Ferguson Show.
The history of discovery, particularly cosmic discovery, but discovery in general, scientific discovery, is one where at any given moment there's a frontier. And there tends to be an urge for people, especially religious people, to assert that across that boundary into the unknown lies the handiwork of God. This shows up a lot. Newton even said it. He had his laws of gravity and motion, and he was explaining the moon and the planet. He was there. He doesn't mention God for any of that. And then he gets to the limits of what his equations can calculate. So can't quite figure this out. Maybe God steps in and makes it right every now and then. That's where he invoked God. And Ptolemy, he bet on the wrong horse, but he was a brilliant guy. He formulated the geocentric universe with Earth in the middle. This is where we got epicycles and the machinations of the heavens. There was still a mystery to him. He looked up and uttered the following words: when I trace at my pleasure the windings to and fro of the heavenly bodies. These are the planets going through retrograde and back. The mysteries of the earth. When I trace at my pleasure the windings to and fro of the heavenly bodies, I no longer touch earth with my feet. I stand in the presence of Zeus himself and take my fill of ambrosia. What he did was he didn't invoke Zeus to account for the rock that he's standing on or the air he's breathing. It was this point of mystery, and in gets invoked God. This, over time, has been described by philosophers as the God of the gaps. Mm-hmm. If that's where you're going to put your God in this world, then God is an ever-receding pocket of scientific ignorance. If that's how you're going to invoke God, if God is the mystery of the universe, these mysteries, we're tackling these mysteries one by one. If you're going to stay religious at the end of the conversation, God has to be more to you than just where science has yet to tread. So to the person who says, maybe dark matter is God, if the only reason why you're saying it's because it's a mystery, then get ready to have that undone.
The Phil Ferguson Show is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on the show should be interpreted as personalized investment advice. Investments should be based on your personal situation, and you, of course, should consult with your financial advisor or tax professional before taking any actions.
You're listening to The Phil Ferguson Show.
This Investing Skeptically segment is a comparison of different strategies over, a little bit of a longer term. When I first did this, it was a 10-year historical from 2016 back to 2006. And so often people will do games with starting dates, and I did a little bit of a game here myself. I could have started with 2009 and completely avoided the stock market drop of 37% in 2008 and made the stock market numbers look really good and really healthy. But instead, I just figured I'll go back 10 years. 6 and 7 were, I think, reasonably good years, and 8 was horrible. Of course, we include in this the March of 2020 drop, where the market went down like 35% in 1 month, but then it recovered all of that in like 6 months, 7 months. And of course, this will include information for all of calendar year 2022. So I think This is now 17-year performance of a couple of different strategies. A couple of caveats before we start getting into this. This is complete and utter fiction. I've had no one double check this. I've had no one check my ginormous spreadsheet and all of the calculations. I think it's right. I think it's a reasonable representation of a couple of different investment strategies. Do your own double checking, your own due diligence, as they say. Check for yourself, see if these ideas help you. Other caveats, the plan that I'll talk about how accounts were spread for calendar year 22, or if I happen to mention any other years, are historical fabrications. They are allocations that no one had, not even me, in dollar amounts that nobody had. It's just a topic, something to discuss. Any weightings or percentages that I suggest for 2022 might be equal to what I did late summer in my 6-segment episode. It might be slightly different. I don't remember exactly what I said then, but I do know it's different than what I'm doing now. Not wickedly different, but there's differences, and I've teased you enough already with what those differences are, but I can't go over them yet because I've not quite finished my project of rebalancing every single account. I'm really close. So hopefully one, maybe two podcasts from now, so 2 to 3 weeks, I will have a big show about changing allocations in the plan from what it was for most of 22 to what I am going to do going forward. And it may or may not help you. So, I might be looking out for my own best interest. I might have unintentionally or intentionally, because you don't know, changed numbers or allocations to make my performance look better, yada, yada, yada. Everything you could possibly think of. And again, it's just for discussion. It's not actual numbers. Nobody actually had this performance, nor am I claiming that they did, even including me. Okay, we get that out of the way. Like I said, in 2016, I started doing this, and I did it for 10-year historical data. It seemed like a pretty good place to start. Some people asked. So the following year, I did 11-year performance. And I think you'll figure out the pattern by yourself that I do this once a year. And I'm comparing 4 different investment strategies. And again, the essence, the big things to take away, I'm going to go over. Let's not focus too much on tiny little details because, like I said, I could have played with the numbers and goosed this all up. So the 4 different ways one could have started to invest in 2006. And in 2006, you had $1 million. And at the end of 2006, you took out $50,000, 5% of the $1 million, assuming that you were in or close to retirement, or you were starting to take out your 5% and you were old enough for that to make sense, and you weren't violating my 4% rule for people under 62. Here are the results. The 4 strategies. I guess I'll call number 1 is the total stock market. You don't do anything other than just put all of your money in the U.S. stock market. And whether it goes up or down, you take out $50,000. Easy, right? Easy. The other one, I guess I'll call it number 2, is target date 2015. And for this, I used the Vanguard target date fund in 2015. A little addendum that I found out only when I was collecting the data for this is that the target date 2015 fund no longer exists. As you probably know, we're 7 years, give or take, past 2015. And so these target date funds, other companies do this. Vanguard does this. They roll this into a retirement plan because they figured, it's target date 2015. By now you're retired, or you're doing this whole thing wrong because you shouldn't have a 2015 if you're not retired. The 2015 just goes into a target date income fund, and that new fund is VTINX, target date income fund. I don't know, because I was kind of pressed for time, if they've done this for the 2020 fund yet, but If they haven't, they probably will. And of course, in a few years, they'll do it for the 2025 fund, etc. And it's a blend. And you can go on Vanguard's website and look it up, a blend of stocks and bonds. And we're just going to use the numbers that they reported. And of course, the problem with these two portfolios, the total stock market or the target date 2015, which changed into the target date income fund in the middle of 22. Now, the problem with both of these strategies, in my opinion, is that you get what you get and you take out the 50 grand. If the market's up, you take out the 50 grand. If the market's down 20, 30, 40%, you take out the 50 grand. You have no real clarity or granularity in your investments, in your different index funds. You have one position and one position only. All right. Number 3 strategy, which fits really nicely, relates to a strategy that's often called the three-legged stool. Wow. Man, I couldn't have planned this better. So strategy 3 is the three-legged stool. Again, we all of these started with $1 million in 2006. And in this strategy, it was decided that you would put 30% in the total bond index fund, 20% in the total international stock index fund, and 50% in the total stock market USA. So 30% total bonds, 20% total international, and 50%, the remainder, in the US total stock market index. And once a year, you take out your 50 grand. And of course, once a year, you force the adjustment back to 30%, 20%, 50%, as I just described. So you're doing once a year. Maybe this helps you take from the ones that have done the best and take the least from the ones that have done the worst. And so that's kind of nice. And quite frankly, it's really fucking simple to do. All 3 of these strategies are pretty simple and may work pretty well. We'll get to that here in a minute. But a quick reminder, of course, strategy number 1, the total stock market, probably will have the highest, well, they call it risk, but it's mathematical volatility over a certain period of time. So the most ups and downs, or the biggest ups and downs, because it's the U.S. total stock market. It doesn't have any bonds to buffer, provide a cushion. It doesn't have any international even to buffer against the U.S. stock market. The 4th strategy is the Polaris Plan. And the Polaris Plan, quite honestly, is a little complicated. I kind of wish it wasn't as complicated. And the Polaris Plan probably won't work for someone under $400,000 or $500,000 because you have to buy a bunch of different funds and you have to keep an eye on them. Probably adjusting once a year is the maximum you'll need to do. If you have over 2 million, maybe twice a year. That's about it. I mean, even if it's 8 or 9 or 10 million, twice a year should do it. The only exception to that is that if there is a really, really big change in the market, like March of 2020, where it fell 35%, you could take that as an opportunity to say, everything's changed. I'm going to do a rebalance in addition to the once or twice a year that I'm going to do. And that may or may not be in your best interest. I do know from other studies that adjusting 3 or 4 times a year, monthly, and God forbid weekly or daily, that it's not going to generate a benefit. It's going to make a lot of work and possibly create tax consequences. Speaking of tax consequences, all of this I have not reduced by a fee to the advisor, which might be me if you're doing the Polaris Plan. I have not accounted for any trading or transaction costs. And I have not accounted for any taxes that you may have had on selling this. So basically, I'm assuming this is all inside of an IRA. All of that, of course, you could consider unreasonable assumptions, but I wanted to make sure that you know what they are. Even if you are in like the target date fund, as they make adjustments, as they sell bonds and buy new bonds to replace bonds, there are going to be dividends and capital gains. So those accounts are not without tax. And even the total stock market will occasionally add new funds new stocks as they launch, and some stocks that go to zero or bankruptcy will have to be written off. So you will still have each year in a taxable account some gains from something like the total stock market. And now let me summarize some of the performances. We're going back to strategy number 1, total U.S. stock market. The most profoundly simple and easy thing to do. You started with $1 million, you put it in the total stock market, you set it and you forget it. And it grows or doesn't grow. And in calendar 22, the U.S. total stock market went down 19.53%. Now, you may have heard from a previous episode that the S&P 500 went down 18.1 or 18.11 or 18.14, depending on who you ask. And this number is a bigger negative because the S&P 500 is 500 stocks. This is the entire U.S. stock market. It includes those 500 stocks and then every other stock, or at least virtually every other stock, which you could figure out because this number is lower. That means that mid-cap and small-cap stocks in 2022, on average, collectively, did a little bit worse than the S&P 500. But not really the topic for this show, but just for reference. And at the end of 2022, this portfolio, which started at $1 million, is now $2,166,000. So that's done pretty freaking good for a portfolio where you're taking out 50 grand a year. Note the 50 grand a year is a fixed number. So even when the portfolio has grown, I have not changed the $50,000. Why? Well, 1, it's simple. 2, if I change the $50,000, what is the methodology that I'm going to use to change the $50,000? Is it based on inflation? Is it based on your need? Is it based on the size of the portfolio? So if a portfolio gets bigger, you start taking out more money, which all of those concern me because they might hide the variance in the performance between these 4 different strategies. So I intentionally selected 50,000 and left it at 50,000 a year. Another thing that supports this idea of leaving it at 50,000 a year, most people, when they retire, the amount of money that they're living on in the first year or 2 of retirement is the number they continue to pull out of their portfolio year after year after year. So if inflation is 4% and you're 50,000, you now need 52,000, what tends to happen is most people find a way to make 50,000 work and they don't go and they don't pull out 52,000. Additionally, if part of your money is coming from Social Security or a pension, they might have cost of living adjustments that take care of a good chunk of whatever you might need for inflation. But again, maybe something to dig into further into a separate episode. So 1 million has now turned into 2.166. And of course, at the beginning of the year, it was almost 2.7 million. So 2.7. So if you look at 1 year performance, you might look at the 2.7 changing to 2.1 and freak the fuck out. Now, if that's the kind of person you are, well, maybe this is not the strategy for you because it has the most volatility out of all of the 4 different strategies here. But spoiler alert, it has the best results. So just saying, yes, that means I acknowledge that it has beaten the Polaris Plan. I'm not doing something magical. I'm trying to balance off getting pretty darn good returns while avoiding some risks from time to time, a la not having long-term bonds and having more money in value than growth, at least for 2022. All right, target date fund. The target date fund this year, target date 2015, which I wasn't able to pull the data, so I pulled it from VTINX. Part of the year, it really was the target date 2015, and part of the year, it was the target date income fund. The money was rolled from one fund to the other. The target date income fund, I'm pretty sure, already existed and has a full year of performance numbers. That is the number that I pulled. I don't think it's that different from what the 2015 would reveal if it had stayed for the whole year. And I don't know that there's much of a difference having had target date 2015 for 7 or 8 months of the year and then the target date income fund for the remaining months of the year. So just be aware, there's a possible fine little detail there that I have not appropriately accounted for in this calendar year. But again, we're looking at big picture. But that fund, VTINX, for calendar year 2022, the Vanguard Target Date Income Fund, was down 12.74%. Not so bad. Definitely didn't lose the 19.5 that the total stock market lost. So you might not be as upset by the change or the reduction in value that occurred in calendar year 2022. The resulting amount, again, we started with 1 million, and now after 17 years, that portfolio is $1,035,000. Now, hopefully, this jumped and grabbed your attention. $1,035,000. The total stock market one was $2,166,000. This is a great example of what happens when you make more per year for many years. In 1 year, you can focus on the negative and you can say, this fund went down 12.7, not 19.53, kicking. But if you look back, and let's do that just for laughs, just to the previous year, I think in calendar year 2021, the Vanguard Total Stock Market Index went up 25.7, where the target date made 5.78. And so this is the kind of thing that concerns me and why I will often tell people that a target date fund is not necessarily bad, and it's not necessarily you should avoid it at all costs, but it may not be the optimal way to invest. But clearly the target date 2015 or the target date income fund has dramatically less volatility than the total stock market fund. But in this case, the result after 17 years, in both cases, you started with $1 million. In one case, you have 2.166 million. And in the other case, you have 1.034 million. Now, as far as you're concerned, you're still getting your 50 grand every year. And you'll probably be able to keep taking your 50 grand every year in both scenarios. So the end result for you as a person in retirement might not really matter that much. However, if I'm opening my statement after 17 years of investing, I know I'm going to like a $2 million account better than I like a $1 million account. If you have people that you care for and that you help finance and fund, or you want them to have your money after you pass away, you definitely are a long-term investor, and you should behave accordingly, in my opinion. Next thing, strategy number 3, also known as the three-legged stool, 30% total bonds, 20% total international stock, and then 50% total U.S. stock market. The total bond fund from Vanguard, I've talked about recently, did lose 13.2% in 22. Wow. A way bigger loss than I thought was possible in bonds. And luckily for us, we dodged a good chunk of that, losing probably, 8% instead of minus 13. International down around 16%. And the total stock market, as we discussed earlier, was down 19.53. And again, we started with $1 million. You take out your 50 grand, yada, yada, yada. You've got the idea. The loss for this year was 16.92%. So a bigger loss than the target date fund in this year, a smaller loss than the total stock market in this year. And the resulting amount after 17 years is 1.458 million. So almost 1.5 million. You've still done well. And when you take out your 50,000, of course, you take out the 50,000 and reallocate the funds every single year and force it back into 30% bonds, 20% international stock, and 50% U.S. stock. You could change the ratio on those things and get different results, but you get the idea. And this falls squarely in between the really conservative target date income fund and the very volatile and aggressive total stock market, which is a bigger number. So here you have three very different results. Roughly 1 million, roughly 1.5, or roughly 2.1, 2.2 million. Now let's look at the relatively complicated, maybe radically complicated, I don't know, the Polaris Plan, where we're making adjustments and trying to avoid problems, trying to maximize opportunities, trying to have a reasonable long-term return, yada, yada, yada. This year, the theoretical plan in my spreadsheet, which again, nobody had, not even including me, your performance will vary. This started with $1 million. And at the beginning, there was $300,000 in bonds, $450,000, about 45% in the U.S. stock market, and $250,000, or about 25% in international. Now, from time to time, maybe in a year or maybe in 2 years, sometimes more often, I have made tweaks to the plan. I have tried to fairly represent them in this spreadsheet, but I'm the one making the spreadsheet. So keep that in mind. I also did not keep bonds as a fixed percentage of the plan, because when you're taking out $50,000, for me, it's about the cash flow. So as the domestic and international stocks become larger and larger, one hopes, over time, the bonds can become larger as well, but they don't need to be really much larger because the cushion is protected for even more years. But I have allowed the bonds to drift up to about $400,000 at the start of 22. And part of that was because of the pretty good success, not in 2008, of course, but most years since I started this in 2006, the stock market has outperformed the bond market. We don't need more bonds, but on the other hand, if you've made a lot of money, why not move some money into bonds? Other things that have worked out really well in 2022, the vast majority of bonds that I used were conservative and had losses like 5, 10, 12%. And I avoided a lot of the bonds that are intermediate and long-term bonds. As an example, the Vanguard Long-Term Investment Grade Bond Fund, which is corporate bonds. The actual government fund did worse, but I don't have the data in front of me. But that long-term fund lost 25.6%. So the other thing that worked out really well this last year is about 60% in value and 40% in growth. And the most extreme result there, the most extreme variance, is the large cap value fund went down 2.1%, while the large cap growth fund went down 33.1%. Real estate fund is also in there, down 26%. Not happy about that, of course. And then the handful of international funds that I use, which include large cap growth, large cap value, Pacific Index, European Index, international small cap, and emerging markets. This is, a mediocre effort, mediocre result of me trying to do what I'm doing with the U.S. stock market. International stock funds, at least Vanguard international stock and index funds, don't break out the same way domestic does. So here I'm trying to have different things that might have different results in a similar period. As an example, the International Growth Fund is down 31, but the International Value Fund is down 12. Nowhere near as dramatic as the U.S. result, but still a variance. And of course, from time to time, maybe once a year, you can go in and rebalance this. That portfolio, as detailed in this spreadsheet, which nobody had, lost 15.4%, and it is now worth approximately $1.8 million. So the winner, if you only count dollars, is the total stock market index at 2.1, almost 2.2 million. Second place is the Polaris Plan at 1.8 million. And then we have the three-legged stool at 1.5 and the target date fund at 1 million, roughly rounding. So you can see the results, and unsurprisingly, the results that have the highest performance at this point in time are the ones that had the greatest risk, aka greatest volatility. So something for you to think about. But the Polaris Plan 1.8 versus 2.2, it still grew quite considerably, but in this down year, instead of losing 19.5, it's down 15.4. So it's not as bad in this calendar year, although there are years where I do worse than that, especially when the stock market just goes up, because then bonds become a drag. But, pretty solid results over 10 years, pretty good money, and hopefully somewhat of a validation that taking out 5% is probably not going to be a problem, particularly if you can pick and choose which things you take the 5% out of. Of course, if your portfolio went up 0% on average and you took out 5%, well, not 0% on average, 0% every single year, you could do that for 20 years. So 5%, as long as you're getting regular, reasonable returns in the stock market, 5% for most people is going to be very safe. 6% is what I suggest for 67 years of age and older. And of course, if you come to me and you're 82 and no one in your family has ever lived past 82, well, I might get wacky and tell you to take 8, 9, 10% of the money out. Because even if you take 10% out with no growth, it's going to last 10 years. So just things to think about. I hope this helped. I hope this was informative. I know it was longer than I expected. Not by much, though, because I knew this was going to take a while to go through. If you have any questions about this or how that worked, let me know. You can email me, phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com. And of course, at this time, my minimum for new clients is $2 million, and what they say in the biz, of assets under management. So that means your car collection doesn't count. The equity in your home or farmland doesn't count. If you have annuities and you aren't willing or interested in moving them over into a taxable or an IRA account, they don't count. But if you do have more than $2 million and you'd like some assistance, some guidance, you can send me an email, of course. So that wraps up this segment. I hope you enjoyed.
Pace e lunga vita.
Lunga vita e prosperità.
The Phil Ferguson Show is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on the show should be interpreted as personalized investment advice. Investments should be based on your personal situation, and you, of course, should consult with your financial advisor or tax professional before taking any actions.
Fourth, for condemning my friend Stephen Fry for his nature, for saying you couldn't be a member of our church. You're born in sin. There's a revolting piece of casuistry that's sometimes offered on this point. Yeah, we hate the sin only. We love the sinner. Stephen is, I'm sorry to say, not quite like other girls. It's his nature. Actually, he is like other girls in that he's, when I last checked, absolutely boy mad. He's not being condemned for what he does, he's being condemned for what he is. You're a child made in the image of God. Oh, no, you're not. You're a faggot. And you can't join your church and you can't go to heaven. This is disgraceful. It's inhuman. It's obscene. And it comes from a clutch of hysterical, sinister virgins who've already betrayed their charge in the children of their own church. For shame, for shame.
You're listening to The Phil Ferguson Show.
All right, everybody, we have one of those special guests. It's a deconversion story. The stories I love, and I know that you guys love. I had a volunteer, and we're we're going to chat now about religion, leaving religion. And my special guest is Rich Miller. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing good. Hey, Phil.
Oh, and before we even get into like your religion story, you have a podcast, right?
I do. The audiobook Speakeasy. I'm an audiobook narrator, and I started it about 5.5 years ago, I guess, because I couldn't find anything at the time for aspiring narrators to learn about the people in the industry. All the podcasts that I found were about like audiobook reviews.
Yeah.
And so I decided, well, fuck it, I'll just start my own. So I've had the pleasure to interview a lot of narrators who've won lots of awards, producers, directors, a whole lot of people. It's been a lot of fun. And
I'm conflicted here because part of me is tempted to fuck with your voice so you don't sound so good. But also on the other hand, it is a sign that, I can do an interview with someone that sounds good if they have a little bit of equipment.
Yeah, I've definitely got the equipment for
it.
it.
Because occasionally I end up talking to somebody on, a flip phone that's 15 years old, and they go, I didn't sound very good. And I'm like, no, you didn't. But I didn't make that happen. It wasn't me.
Yeah, no, I understand. I've got my booth. I'm in my booth now, and so I've got some decent equipment. Hopefully it sounds good on your end.
It sounds fine. And I've been going through, and I don't know how current you are on my new studio, my new office in Florida.
Yeah.
I recently hung curtains from the ceiling that go.
Oh yeah, like moving blanket type stuff.
Yeah, but they're actual like curtains.
Oh, okay.
The ceiling I think is 9 feet high, and these curtains are almost 9 feet high. And I did the math, and I was so happy it worked out that the bottom half or quarter inch of the curtains drag on the floor.
Perfect.
And so the sound doesn't sneak under them, very much not around them. It doesn't have the echoey bathroom effect in this room as it used to have, in part because of that. And I actually did something where I like hands-on, like with the drill and screws and stuff. I was like, wow, this is high tech for me.
That's cool. If you ever want to upgrade further, we can have a separate conversation about that, because I built my own booth, and that was lots of drills and hammers and acoustic foam and whatnot.
I do have actual specific questions that maybe we can go over after we do this recording.
Sure, yeah.
And we're already recording, so I'm going to get into it. You volunteered to be on, and you used to be religious, and I think you grew up kind of Catholically Anglican. What was going on there?
So my mom was Catholic before she got excommunicated, because they did that more often back then when you divorced somebody, and her husband hit her, and she said, I'm out of here. But she was raised Catholic, and so I was baptized as a baby in a Catholic church that at the time would do that even for somebody who was excommunicated. I guess it was difficult back then to kind of get around things. But my dad was Protestant when he was growing up, so they decided on Episcopal, which when I got older, I decided was basically Catholicism for non-Catholics.
Yeah.
Now I guess it's a relatively liberal denomination overall.
It is. They let women talk and everything.
Yeah, exactly. And be priests and whatnot.
Weird.
Yeah, very. But at the time it was Episcopalian, just because that was what they sort of compromised on. So that was what we did. And I was confirmed in that church, had a first communion, but we were not a really religious family. I think that we went to church, I don't know. I think for a while it was regularly every Sunday, but for most of my childhood, I really don't remember going to church very often.
Yeah, it's like Christmas and Easter kind of thing, or even less than that.
Well, I think it was a lot more than that when we were really young, when my sister and I were a lot younger. And I think that when we got older, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, it was a lot less frequent, but more than just the major holidays.
Okay.
But by the time I switched to something else, I think I was 14. And by that point, I think it was really maybe only just the major holidays, if that.
Yeah. Now, at some point you thought of were you being called to be a missionary or a minister or something?
I was. So when I was 14, I think that you probably are aware of the 4 to 14 rule.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes.
I think I was 14 at the time, and a friend of mine in high school invited me to his Baptist church. What I didn't know at the time was that I'm virtually certain at this point that the reason he invited me was not because he was worried about my soul, although that may have been, down on the list. Oh, yeah, well, that's important too. But the youth group at that church was having a contest at the time, and you got points for every visitor you brought.
Oh, points.
And so, yeah, and everybody who participated in this thing would get this prize at the end. So, excuse me, so he invited me, and I went, and I really felt like I fit in. So I was a nerdy kid, and I really felt like for whatever reason, I fit in here. I liked the kids that were in the youth group. I understood the foundations of what they were, even though I wasn't raised Baptist. It was Christian, that guy on the cross and all that stuff.
How different could it be?
Exactly. I was thinking, well, this is Christianity. And so I went, and I really felt like I fit in, and I liked the music, and I paid attention, and I just really fell into it, hook, line, and sinker. And then after I'd been there for a couple of years, and I'd responded to an altar call because they were always so moving, and I finally decided I do want to go in this direction, and I got baptized there, the full dunking in the water and everything, and I really felt like, yeah, I'm gonna be either a pastor or a missionary, and I wanted to go to Pacific Coast Baptist Bible College, which existed at the time in San Dimas. It's no longer there, but and I was going to go there, and I was all in.
But you didn't go there because
my parents did what I consider one of the best things they ever did for me. They told me they didn't know anything about this school.
Yeah.
My sister was going to Occidental College at the time, and I had a couple of cousins that had gone there. And they told me, they asked me, is it accredited? So I talked to whoever I needed to and found out it was not an accredited college. And they said, well, we're not going to pay for it. We'll pay for you to go to Oxy, but we're not going to pay for you to go there. And so I didn't have a tiny bit of savings from just working in a restaurant. And I thought, well, okay, I'll go where you want me to go. And I was not happy about it. But at this point, I think that's probably one of, if not the best things my parents ever did to me.
Nice. And so you went to an actual accredited school.
Exactly. And I found out that there are a lot of people who don't believe what I believe. And there are a lot of different beliefs in the world. And there are people who don't believe any of this. And so it really kind of opened my eyes a little. And at one point, I thought, well, I'm going to keep doing this. And I haven't been going to church regularly because I'm away at school and not by my home church. So I found a church, a Baptist church that was about a mile away. And I walked up there one Sunday, and I really didn't feel it. I just didn't feel like I fit in. And I thought that it was kind of plastic. I don't know. It just felt not really, not real somehow. And that kind of started me on a path to, I don't know if I want to do this anymore.
Yeah, it's just not feeling right.
No, it just didn't.
And of course, at that moment, you didn't say, God damn it, I'm an atheist. You just stopped going.
Sometimes I hear people talk about their, watershed moments and think, well, all of a sudden I just thought, nope, I don't believe anymore. And that was not me. I was just like, I don't know. I just don't know. So I kind of just became I don't really know what to think agnostic for like 30 years.
30.
Yeah, it was a long time. I mean, that was back when I was in college, and I think it was right after we moved here to Tucson, right around the time I was getting to be 50. So it was about 30 years, and it was just kind of a I don't really care agnostic kind of attitude. I'd be happy to talk to people, but never really got into religion. Nobody tried to convert me to anything else. And so I just kind of let it sit in the back of my head and not really worry about it.
You did not make one of the most common fatal mistakes for religious belief, taking it seriously. Because you're just kind of like, yeah, whatever. I got other shit to worry about. I got other things to do. It's the people that are like really into it that sometimes just snap out of it because it breaks. Mm-hmm. But if you're kind of like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I just thought I'm not really comfortable doing what I had been doing, but I don't really know. So you can all have it. That's fine. Whatever.
And so 30 years of kind of whatever. And then you kind of felt like you took a corner, or is it just this long, slow, gradual thing? You got to a point.
Well, it was a long, slow, gradual thing where I was less and less, concerned about it, and thinking less and less that much of it was true. And then Jerry DeWitt came out with Hope After Faith.
Yeah.
And I saw it in a local bookstore right about the time he came out with it.
Yeah.
In fact, looking at the date that it was posted for when it was published, I think they may have actually had an advanced copy or something. I think it might have been a week or two before it was officially released. But I saw it and I thought, well, that looks interesting. Read the jacket. And so I bought it. I came home and read it. And at the end of it, I thought, you know what? This is all just bullshit. He's right. I just need to come out and say I'm an atheist because I don't believe this crap anymore.
Have you ever met Jerry?
I haven't, no.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, next time I talk to him, I'm going to throw you out there as someone he should talk to, because I know he would be very, very happy.
Sure, yeah, and he sounds like a great guy. I know that he had a podcast for a while. I don't know if he still does, but I listened to that for a while, and I've heard him speak on other shows as well. He really does seem like a neat guy, and he has a very interesting story.
Indeed.
Not really paralleling mine all that much, but sure, fundamentalist for a while, and for a long while for him.
Yeah.
And he got farther into it than I ever did.
Yes, he did.
And then he kind of decided the same thing. Yeah, this is crap.
Yeah, he's been on the show, so listeners, you can Google the Phil Ferguson Show, Jerry DeWitt, and find. I think he's been on 2 or 3 times, and if it's not been 2 or 3, I need to call him and have him back because he is a good friend and a great guest.
Yeah, I'm sure that's where I heard him at some point, was on your show.
I'm sure I'm
sure he's been on other ones too. But anyway, yeah, so I read that and I just thought, I just can't do this anymore. And my one big concern at that point was my mom.
Yeah.
Because I thought, if I come out and say, I'm not a Christian, it's going to break her heart. And even though she wasn't going to church at the time,
right?
It was so firmly ingrained in her that, there is a God and you have to do the right thing and we have to see each other in heaven and all of that stuff. I knew that it was going to break her heart. And I thought, okay, but I just don't feel right saying, yes, I'm a Christian. If I'm going to say publicly I'm an atheist, I need to be willing to do that with her. So I had to make that choice. Yes, I am going to do that, but I'm not going to be the one to bring it up. But if it comes up, I'm going to be honest.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy that it never came up before she died.
I think that's often, but not always, the right path. I actually just had an experience today on Facebook where someone put up some information about, how few people in prison are atheists and some other, fun facts. Mm-hmm. And their mom responded with, what's this with all of the Christian hate? And the person that made the post made a bunch of comments back to this person. I made a comment to this person. And then the person that responded took the time to tell me that they are the mother of the original poster. And I was kind of like, well,
wow.
why aren't you being respectful then? Because they didn't say anything bad about Christianity at all. They just put up some facts. And I don't know what, if anything, is going to happen. I'm going to get blocked or something. But yeah, it's just so weird. It's such a dual thing. I had a high school friend, and we were friends for probably a good 10 years after high school, that at one point we got to chatting on Facebook, and he's like, you don't really believe this shit, do you? Meaning not religion. Mm-hmm. And I said, yeah, absolutely. And he goes, well, fine, do whatever you want to do. Just tell me you're not sharing this shit with your kids. And I'm like, I am. And then he unloaded. He just went crazy. And I'm like, okay, well, we're done. Yeah. God damn it.
Yeah, I've been fortunate. By the time this happened with me, it wasn't like I had that many friends who were super religious. And I'm totally fine with people believing what they want. I hear these, the war on Christmas and all these stories about the persecution. It's like, what nonsense.
Yeah.
I'm perfectly happy. My sister was very active in the church that she and her husband were going to. That's fine. People can believe what they believe for whatever reasons they believe it. I love my sister. I still loved my mom when she was alive. I just didn't really want to have that conversation with her. Yeah. And so I'm fine with people. Most of my friends, most of my relatives, I mean, you know, they're Christian or have some spiritual beliefs or whatever it is. We're still friends. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
You're going to cut me off because I don't believe what you believe? Okay, then maybe you should cut me off.
Yeah, fair enough. I think that's a very reasonable approach and probably more reasonable than mine. Because I'm a little more direct and dramatic and, you know, about it.
Well,
but
different styles.
Yeah, that's fair. So you obviously are okay because you've said the word now. You're an atheist. Yes. Apparently things didn't go horribly wrong. You never had that big meeting with your mom, so that's nice.
Nope.
Do you think that overall your life's the same or better now that you're not religious?
Because I spent so long not really being religious, even though I wasn't saying, yes, I'm an atheist.
Yeah.
I don't think it's all that much different in the sense of how I interact with people. And I view that as a good thing, more about how I got here, you know, that I was already interacting with people in a reasonable manner. And so I don't think it's really changed all that much. My view of the world around me and how and why people behave they do, and blocks of people, like Christian nationalist kind of thing.
Yeah.
Why and how they act the way that they do and what they do. I think my eyes are a lot more open now to the dangers of religion, as, you know, all religions. But other than that, I wouldn't say that things are all that different.
Fair enough. Is there anything about this story that you didn't get a chance to talk about before we wrap up?
Boy, not that I can think of.
That kind of covers it.
I feel really fortunate to have gotten into audiobook narration after this deconversion, as mild of a deconversion as it was, because I've gotten to narrate a bunch of books by atheist authors. And I have learned a ton. I probably wouldn't have picked up their book just off the shelf, but because I've narrated it, I've had the opportunity to read and learn. Done some stuff from John Loftus, who I follow now on social media.
Yeah.
He seems like a really interesting guy.
He's a great guy. Yeah.
David McAfee, some other authors. And I love the fact that because of the way my work ended up going, I've been able to learn more about this topic that now intrigues me and interests me a lot more than it did before. And that's because of the work that I do.
Very good. Well, once again, what is that podcast that everybody should go listen to?
The audiobook Speakeasy. I will say, I totally thank you for the plug.
You
but
bet.
It is kind of a niche podcast because it's really aimed at audiobook narrators.
Fair enough.
But you know, for audiobook listeners who have maybe favorite narrators, maybe they'd like to hear something from some of the narrators that I've spoken with who speak about their process and how they got into the business, or anybody who might be interested in getting into the business. You know, I talk to a lot of coaches and stuff like that. So, but I do recognize that most of your audience is probably like, yeah, not interested.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I of course will now try to go listen to a couple just to learn more about the subject, because by knowing at least something about a lot of things, it makes conversation with clients and or prospective clients when I'm doing my trade, my business, a lot easier if you know something about something.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
But anyway, I didn't want to get too much into that. But once again, thank you, Rich Miller.
You, Phil.
Yeah, I appreciate you being on the show, and thank you again.
Thanks. I'll be listening.
Thank you so much for listening to the show. I greatly appreciate you being here. You can go leave a 5-star review in all the regular places that I talk about. You can share the show with a friend, but you can't send me money. Although if you have at least $2 million that could be considered assets under management, you may email me, Phil@PolarisFinancialPlanning.com, and we can talk, and maybe I just help you out a little bit. maybe you want a little bit more and you want to hire me. That's all allowed. Fun story in the news. Apparently for some people, a constant and perpetual lying will get you in trouble. Now, of course, I'm talking about the now famous George Santos, who lies as much as Trump, but he didn't bankrupt a casino, so he doesn't have that business veritas behind him. After spending several months denying that he was dressing in drag, which not a fucking problem. Okay? So, not a problem to dress in drag. Dress however you want. You be you. I don't have a fucking problem with it. What I have a problem with is perpetual lying and the fact that he is now supporting people and legislation that would hurt people in the LGBTQ community. No fucking way. So anyway, after months and months, or I guess weeks and weeks of denying that he would ever do such a thing, he said, yeah, it was him. It was a younger time, and, he was just letting off steam or something like that. So this dude needs to go. And the only way I can figure out at this point that we can get rid of him is give him a book and allow him to read at a library, because we know the only thing that Republicans hate more than drag queens is drag queens that want to help kids learn how to read. So that is my suggestion of how to get rid of George Santos. Other random political note, yet more documents found in Biden's house. They allowed, I don't know who it was, but the FBI maybe, to come in and search anywhere and everywhere, and they found more. I am saddened by this. I'm heartbroken by this. It does give the appearance of the loss of the moral high ground, and I'm very frustrated that it just keeps going out a few documents at a time. If they had found them all and then reported one time, it would have been, of course, much, much better. It's still not the same because Biden did not hide them. Biden did not lie. Biden did not, well, not to my knowledge, Biden did not have his attorneys swear that they had nothing and that they've given it all away, and then need a police raid or FBI raid to come find them. And who knows what else Trump has left. But it also does probably kind of sort of look like to me, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but it looks like it's going to be Biden v. Trump again. And, not what I want, but hey, we'll see what happens. A lot to go on there, a lot in business, a lot in politics, a lot in religion, crazy, wacky religion out there. I'm going to wrap up today, and I am going to be at Free Flow in the middle of March. That is Free Flow. That is in Florida, in the Orlando area, which is where I live now. So that's kind of cool. Go check it out. Go to the website, sign up, and come and join everybody else and have a great time at the Free Flow Conference, the Free Flow 2023. And I guess that's it for now. So I do hope to see you soon at some time out there in the wild. Until then, ciao.
Turning water into wine, so delicious. JC always does it right. That vicious driving around in his ride, getting BS. Now I'm feeling so fly, like Jesus, like Jesus, like Jesus. Now I'm feeling so fly, like Jesus, like Jesus. Now I'm feeling so fly, like Jesus.
Give me that Momo sis. Give me that Chris and Chris. Ladies love my hair and my cross is what they wear. Get them bottles popping. We got that faith and that love. Now give them 2 more bottles, cause you know I'm a bug. Baby like hell bad. Bring it up, bring it up. When seeing that girls around me, they be acting like they none. Acting like they none, baby, acting like they none. When seeing that girls around me, they be acting like they none.
Water into Jesus, like Jesus, like Jesus.